Who is considered as the father of politics? Aristotle. Who used the term state in modern sense for the first time? Aristotle. Which political scientist was responsible for the development of behavioral approach to the study of political theory? David Easton. The intellectual godfather of behavioralism is Charles Merriam. The historical theory of the origin of the state was propounded by Sir Henry Maine. The term politics has been drawn from Greek word polis, which means city-state. The book Political System is written by David Easton. A framework for political analysis and a system analysis of political life are the books written by David Easton. If sovereignty is not absolute, no state can exist. This statement made by Austin. The pluralistic theory of sovereignty was first propounded by von Gleek. Who has identified state as a community of communities? Aristotle. According to divine origin theory, the king derived his authority from God. Who said that rights are those conditions of social life without which no man can seek in general to be himself at his best? Lusky. Who wrote the book Social Contract? J. Rousseau. It is the people organized for law within a definite territory is state. Who said this? Woodrow Wilson. Who wrote the book Republic? Plato. Who defined democracy as government of the people, by the people, for the people? Abraham Lincoln. Who has described natural rights as nonsense upon stilts? Bentham. Who defined freedom as the absence of opposition? Thomas Hobbes. Which thinker supported the idea of forced freedom? Rousseau. Who defined the Constitution as the autobiography of a power relationship? H. E. Finnar. Who said that state is the march of God on earth? Hegel. The theory of separation of power is propounded by Montesquieu. Who said family is the first school of social life? Aristotle. Who said I don't accept a politics without religion? Mahatma Gandhi. Who is regarded as the exponent of the classical concept of rule of law? A.V. Dicey. Who said power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely? Lord Acton. Behavioral approach in political science is an attempt to make the empirical content of political science more scientific. Who said this? Charles E. Merriam. Political party is an organized body with voluntary membership. Who said this? Feiner. The entitlement theory of property has been propounded by Nozick. Socialism is like a hat which has lost its shape because everyone wears it. Who said this? C. E. M. Joad. A right is a claim recognized by society and enforced by the state. Who said this? Bosanquet. It would be the lasting benefit to political science if the whole concept of sovereignty is surrendered. Who said this? Lusky. Who is the author of the book Modern Democracies? Lord Bryce. Who said democracy is a perverted form of government? Aristotle. Will, not force, is the basis of state. This statement is given by T. H. Green. Who gave the concept of iron law of oligarchy? Robert Michels. Who is the writer of the book Grammar of Politics? Harold J. Lusky. The book Principles of Political Science was written by Gilchrist. Imperialism is the last stage of capitalism. Who said this? Lenin. Who described democracy as a form of government in which everyone has a share? John Seeley. The two words demos and kratos, from which democracy draws its origin, belong to Greek language. Which philosopher fixed that population of 5040 for ideal state? Plato. Who said voice of the people may be voice of God? Henry Manning. Two treatises of government was written by John Locke. Who said political liberty without economic equality is a myth? G.D.H. Cole. Who authored the book Politics of Modernization? David Apter. Who observed political parties as a feature of modern and modernizing societies? Myron Weiner. Hobbes' theory of social contract is explained in which of his books? Leviathan. Which political philosopher is known as the child of Renaissance? Niccolo Machiavelli. From each according to his capacity, to each according to his needs is the principle of communism. Who said, liberty is the opposite of over-government? Seeley. Who said, where there is no law there is no freedom? Locke. The book Das Kapital was written by Karl Marx. Perestroika and glasnost was the reforms put forward by Gorbachev. The term green liberalism was coined by which political philosopher in his book Green Liberalism? Marcel Wissenberg. Who stated that every state is known by the rights that it maintains? Harold J. Lasky. Who is known as the father of the American Constitution? James Madison. The power of a court to determine the constitutionality of a government action is called judicial review. The concept of judicial review in Indian Constitution has been taken from the Constitution of USA. In Britain, Lord Chancellor is the member of Cabinet and also the head of judiciary. Which country first adopted a federal constitution for the first time? USA. Who expressed the view that the British Constitution does not exist? De Tocqueville. When was the first general election held in British India? 1920 to elect members to the Imperial Legislative Council and the Provincial Councils. What was lower chamber upper chamber of the Imperial Legislative Council during British India rule called Central Legislative Assembly and Council of State? How many seats were there in the Central Legislative Assembly for 1920 election in British India? 104 elected seats, of which 66 were contested and 38 were reserved for Europeans elected through the Chambers of Commerce. Who was the first person to demand a separate constitution for India? M. N. Roy, 1934. The Constitution of India borrowed the scheme of Indian Federation from the Constitution of Canada. Who called the Constituent Assembly of India as Nation on Move? Jawaharlal Nehru. Which body framed the Constitution of Independent India? Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly was set up in 1946. Who was the chairman of the drafting committee of the Indian Constitution? Dr. B. R. Ambedkar. Who was the president of the Constituent Assembly? Dr. Rajendra Prasad. The Constitution of India was adopted by the Constituent Assembly in 26 November 1949. Indian Constitution has divided the powers and function of the state into three lists: Union List, the State List, and the Concurrent List. Who was the chairman of the Union Power Committee of Constituent Assembly of India? Jawaharlal Nehru. How many members were initially there in the Constituent Assembly of India? 389. Who presided over the first meeting of the Indian Constituent Assembly? Satchidananda Sinha. Whose remarks are these? The preamble is the horoscope of our sovereign democratic republic. K. M. Mushi. The original Constitution of India has 22 parts, 8 schedules, 395 articles. Which part of the Indian Constitution deals with fundamental rights? Part 3. Who was the chairman of Fundamental Rights Subcommittee of the Constituent Assembly? J. B. Kripalni. Who was the chairman of the Provincial Constitution Committee of the Constituent Assembly? Sardar Patel. Which in Indian Constitution is called Magna Carta? Fundamental rights. Who is the guardian of fundamental rights enumerated in Indian Constitution? Supreme Court. Under which article of the Constitution can an individual move to the Supreme Court directly in case of any violation of fundamental rights? Article 32. What was the time taken by the drafting committee to complete the Indian Constitution? 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. When was the first Parliament election held in India? 25th October 1951 to 21st February 1952. How many national parties contested in first Lok Sabha election held in 1952? 53 parties and 533 independents contested for the 489 Lok Sabha seats. Which state in India became the first democratically elected communist government in the world? Kerala, 1957, under EMS Namboodiripad. G.V.K. Rao Committee on Panchayati Raj Institutions was appointed in 1985 by Planning Commission of India. Which committee recommended the separation of regulatory and development functions at the district level? G.V.K. Rao Committee. Which article of the Indian Constitution provides for the institution of Panchayati Raj? Article 40. When was the Panchayati Raj system introduced in India? 1959. Which state was the first to establish Panchayati Raj institutions? Rajasthan. Which Indian state does not have Panchayati Raj institution at all? Nagaland. In 1977, under whose chairmanship the Panchayati Raj Committee was formed? Ashok Mehta. Article 1 of the Constitution declares India as Union of States. Which article of the Indian Constitution lays down that the state shall take steps to organize village panchayats? Article 40. The Panchayati Raj is included in which list? State list. Under Article 243-D, which category enjoys reservation for panchayat membership in proportion to their population? Scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Article 359 of the Constitution authorizes the President of India to suspend the right to move any court for the enforcement of fundamental rights during national emergency. Article 362 Constitution of India deals with the provisions as to financial emergency. The most effective means of citizens' control over administration is election. What is the maximum allowed duration between the last session of the dissolved Lok Sabha and the recalling of the Lok Sabha? 6 months. Office of CAG in the Indian Constitution has been borrowed from which country? Britain. Which article of the Indian Constitution is related to the appointment of the Controller and Auditor General of India? Article 148. In which year was the anti-defection law passed? 1985. Which amendment was responsible for the anti-defection law? 52nd. Who decides whether the disqualification by anti-defection is to be done or not? Chairman of Rajya Sabha or Speaker of Lok Sabha. The first country in the world to introduce the right to information was Sweden. The method of amending the constitution by popular veto is found in Switzerland. The system of nomination of members of Rajya Sabha has been borrowed from the constitution of Ireland. In India, RTI Act came into force on 12th October 2005. Central administrative tribunals are established under which article of the Constitution of India? Article 323A. Central Administrative Tribunal Act 1985 came into force on 1st July 1985. By which constitutional amendment act was the number of Lok Sabha seats increased from 525 to 545? 31st Constitutional Amendment Act, 1973. Which the article of Indian Constitution deals with the appointment of Attorney General of India. Article 76. Who is the highest legal officer of the Union Government of India? Attorney General of India. Who is known as the second law officer of India? Solicitor General of India. What is the minimum age for the eligibility to be a presidential candidate? 35. The executive actions of the government are carried out under whose name? President. At least how many days of prior notice is required for the impeachment of the President of India? 14 days. Which has the power to carve out a new state in India? The Parliament. The lengthiest written constitution in the world is of India.
Thanks for watching Speed GK YouTube channel. Please support our YouTube channel, kindly subscribe and also please share this video with your friends. Thank you.